looked the same. It looked time just about the same.
Okay.
Because we were on.
Didn't even know, but what are you doing here?
Oh, it was 4-3. Good.
It was talking about my dog's arthritis.
Just bringing it back.
Staff working with.
I don't know if that's gonna get you.
When do you go on
Okay.
vacation?
I leave on the 4th, but my last day is the 29th.
Okay, can I have something?
How are you guys
Okay,
doing?
I'm just no, I'm just going on vacation. Oh. Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
Here for.
Who's that?
What?
We can't start early, but we can start late. That's okay.
Thank you.
Did you kiss every girl in the place?
I tried.
Okay.
Yes. Neurofibrillation.
Yeah.
Isn't his name Sanford Goodman?
Who?
Yes.
Me? I would sit down, but.
What now? What? Now.
You know, I'm flinching.
What are you all dressed up for?
County Commission.
His
for
first
Palm
communion.
Springs for the CRH.
Oh shit! I wasn't there.
It was good. We didn't get to speak because it didn't go that far. They voted 4-3 to move it forward.
No, I mean like.
Guess the feeling the heat.
Well,
Hearing
they
footsteps.
Your dog can't hear.
administrator
Well, seriously, I thought
Good.
we brought it up for discussion.
Very good.
came up where they were talking and they weren't.
Who voted against it?
Arthritis dog
Melissa.
on table.
Burger,
Take a vote on
your
your next
boy,
steps.
Kerner?
Lachey.
Oh, Valashay.
I'm always open for,
What's up with that? What's up with him?
the backup. Should I bring
I
in
like them
backup?
saying it the other way.
Chat with him.
Your x-rays, what's the extent of this?
Didn't he almost
Lachey turned?
termed
Yeah, I
out?
ain't about
Yeah,
to
he's turned out.
Exactly.
He's not. Is he out of there?
Where have
He's
we
not
seen
out of
those
there yet.
x-rays already?
I knew him only from Gardens.
Oh yeah. Hal's a good guy. I just sometimes I wonder how he votes.
I see marks in his
Mm.
hand.
Melissa said that she-
Are we waiting for Omari or what are we doing here?
I don't know. I think we have a rain delay.
Okay.
Why are we whispering?
We're good to
Hello?
go. You are.
calling all mayors.
Wow.
Has anyone seen Commissioner
It's a
Hardy?
tough
What do you look
crowd.
like?
After last night's meeting.
Madam Mayor, it's 6:03.
O'clock. All over again.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, August 20th, regular City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy is absent for the
So anxious last night.
roll call. Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the invocation on behalf of Commissioner Robinson, followed by the pledge.
Beloved God, who created all in love, teach us to love all that is good and beautiful in this world. Teach us to honor the dignity of difference, recognizing that one who is not in our image is none the less in your image. Never forgetting that the people not like us are still people like us. Amen.
Amen.
Vice Mayor, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very much.
Okay, additions, deletions, reordering?
I've heard nothing.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
I know.
Not me.
Okay, we'll move right on to our presentations on the Census 2020.
will speak no.
Jess, will you be presenting who's?
I'm the driver.
All right.
Madam Mayor and council members, my name is Sandy Goodman, even though it's Sanford. My mother named me that, but What you see up there is that we're part of the Atlanta Region Census Office. That means that the regional operation of the census includes our 7 states: North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Florida and the region itself is the most populated region in the country, and Florida is the most populated state. Next slide. Simply put, the purpose of the census operations is to accurately count every person living in the United States only once and in the right place. There are 3 primary reasons. It's mandated by the Constitution, for political power, and the allocation of money. It's mandated. The United States Constitution requires a census be conducted every 10 years. The census covers the entire country and everyone living in it. And that's in accordance with Article 1, Section 2, if anybody wants to look. Next slide. For political power, the census is used for the equitable distribution of power in our democracy. Every 10 years, the results of the census are used to reapportion the House of Representatives, determining how many seats each state gets. Of the 438 total House seats, 435 are allocated to states based upon the census population. And they are subject to change every 10 years. And if you want to go look back in time, in 2010, Florida picked up 2 seats. Someone else lost 2 seats. Additionally, after each census, state officials use the results to redraw boundaries of their congressional and state legislative districts, adapting to population shifts. And even school districts' lines are changed. Next slide. Money. Many federal and state programs funds are distributed using census numbers to guide them. Data from the census determine how more than $675 billion are distributed each year, and is spent in accordance supporting vital programs on the state, federal, and local levels. It's also important to note that a relatively small undercount can have a significant economic impact in your communities over the course of a decade until the next census. Using Palm Beach County's number of $1,600 per every person not counted, it just takes 625 people to reach $1 million. Next slide. In previous censuses, the primary method of responding was to receive a questionnaire in the mail and complete it and mail it back in a postage-free envelope. Instead, the census has gone into technology and made it easy for people to respond anytime, anywhere. You'll be able to respond to the census online via a computer or a smartphone. For the 2020 census, our focus is to promote self-response, which is the primary way to respond, thereby eliminating a lot of the cost of paper. And for those who are unable to or choose not to respond online, we offer 2 secondary ways to respond. You can call an 800 number to respond to a census taker who will take and enter your information via encryption, or you can wait until mid-April when a letter will appear and a paper form delivered to your home. Address canvassing is the first of our field operations and will begin, actually it began on August 18th of this year. What we do there is we establish where to count people by knowing what addresses. The operation, an accurate address list ensures that residents who will be invited to participate in the census and that the census counts every resident in a correct location. For the census addressing operation, census workers will be out in your community verifying addresses to make sure our housing inventory is complete so that we can know where everyone is. The operation allows us to send mailing packages to the households for self-response. When it's time to respond, most households receive an invitation in the mail. That invitation is going to be a geocoded postcard. Most areas of the Atlanta region are likely to respond online, so most households will receive this geocoded postcard asking them to go online to complete the census questionnaire. By the way, I got the questions 2 nights ago, and there are 9 questions, and not one of them would be considered inappropriate. They're just looking to get the demographics of the community. So from March 12th to March 20th, households will receive an invitation to respond. Areas that are historically less likely to respond online will receive paper questionnaires with the invitation. From March 16th to March 24th, every household that hasn't already responded will receive reminder postcards. That's because the census is expecting that everyone who gets that first wave of postcards is going to respond immediately. The system will not crash like it did with the Affordable Care Act, so we're not concerned. April 20th to April 27th, the final reminder postcards will go out before being followed up in person. Next. This timeline shows the big picture of the Census 2020 operation activities. We are currently motivating people for self-response. We have been meeting with our partners and meeting with organizations and governments from all backgrounds and communities to make them aware of the census is coming and talk to them about the benefits of completing the census for their constituents. Now we have address canvassing. Next is field collections operation, and then the census day, and then at last is the non-response follow-up, which will happen by feet on the ground, knocking on people's doors when they have not responded to all those invitations. That leads to the data population for each state, which must be delivered to the president by December 31st, 2020. Next slide. Ultimately, the success of the census depends upon everyone's participation. During the operational phase, the Census Bureau depends upon cross-sector collaborations with organizations and individuals to get the word out. With the combined effort, the completion of the 2020 census will successfully provide America the data that it needs to make good policies and decisions for its growing population, which right now is about 330 million. I have to recognize Jessica Savage, who is the lead person on the mayor's complete count committee and has been in contact with me 6 or 7 times every day for the last couple of weeks.
Thank you.
And she
We're sorry
really,
about that.
she really knows her work. So now I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for your presentation. It's widely speculated that in 2010, the city of Lake Worth was seriously undercounted.
Yes.
Is the Census Bureau aware of that? And if so, what special arrangements or considerations are being taken this year to make sure that we try to get it right this time?
Yes, the Census Bureau is aware, and me is the answer.
I beg your pardon?
Yes, the census is aware that Lake Worth was undercounted in 2010,
Right.
and the answer for 2020 is me.
Right. So in May, you're going to have a bunch of folks come knocking on doors here in Lake Worth Beach. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I really don't think so. I think that the way that Jessica has identified the partners to be on the Complete Count Committee and the strategy to send a unified message through those partners, I think that the response rate will be much higher than it was in 2010. The idea the census has is that the voice that delivers the message is more important than the message, because people won't listen to me. They don't know me. But they will listen to people who they identify with and respect. And the trusted voices that we empower with that unified message that we want them to deliver is the way the people will respond. And the most trusted of trusted voices are that of the faith-based community. And Jessica has made sure that those people are included in the committee. So when we think about the barriers that would stop people from responding to the census, there are lots of them, but it won't be because of lack of knowledge. That knowledge is being communicated through the effective communication through the Complete Count Committee. And I just wish that every other city and every town and village in Palm Beach County would do the same. Right now, I only have 17 more, like you, that are doing it as Complete Count Committees. And they're going to do a yeoman's job as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Other questions?
Vice Mayor?
I just wanted to thank you for being here tonight. On behalf of the Palm Beach County League of Cities and the Florida League of Cities, we've had updates at our current and she was fabulous. She danced. Are you going to dance for us?
No, no rhythm.
But I'm very happy with the question and the changes in the questions. I'm happy that as a white man, I can identify as an Italian white man if I choose to.
Right.
And also, on behalf of Lake Worth Beach, we can identify as gay and lesbian if we choose to.
Yes.
Those questions, weren't going to be on there originally, and we know that there were some questions that it did not work, not only for Lake Worth Beach, but America in a whole. So I'm happy that we've come so far, and that it looks different. And I'm hoping that Jess is fabulous, and with your help, that we can get the count that we need. Can you go a little bit into the undercount, what you feel the undercount might be in this area?
Well, the dissection of the undercount is really based upon the demographics that we have from the American Community Survey. The Census Bureau is not just the decennial census that happens on each 0 year, but it's a combination of all of the information that it has been collecting since 1790, although no one is alive to report it. In 2005, the census went to another survey called the American Community Survey. That survey is distributed to 250,000 residents per month, per year, ever since 2005. And it collects a wealth of knowledge. For example, in the year 2000 and all years before, the census had two forms. It had a short form, about 10 questions, and it had a long form. And the people who got the long form got both, and the long form had about 50 questions, and it went into a lot of different demographic characteristics. In 2005, they created the American Community Survey and did away with the long form in 2010. By the way, what we call the American Community Survey in Census is the old long form on steroids, because it really has a lot of substantive questions. So the demographics that are in a system what we call Rome, which Jessica is familiar with, and your GIS staff here is very familiar with, actually identifies almost block by block within a census tract those characteristics that are problematic and likely to be problematic for testing, for responding, including limited English proficient, new immigrant population, all those other
I know children jumped out to undercounting of children.
In 2010, more than 1 million children across the country who were 5 years old and younger were not counted. And when we went to seek the reasons, we got a couple of really strange ones. One was that in some cultures, not the American culture, they don't count children until they become of age. So they didn't even think about counting them.
And that's some of the largest funding, the pre-K, the SNAP,
Absolutely.
all those programs that we really need.
And the significance of them not being counted in 2010 was that nobody had demographics to plan for them throughout their schooling years. So yeah, there's a whole litany of programs. I used to come from the school system in New York. I was a deputy superintendent. But what we lost out on is all of that planning to age them through. They're in high school now if they were under 5 then. So that's another characteristic. And again, I think that working with the GIS people and Jessica and identifying those pockets, we hope to get that response rate up significantly. My goal is to get it above 80. The rate for Palm Beach County in 2010 was 74%. You were way below that.
We were
66. We were 66% last census.
And when you think about the funding that we have here as a city, I mean, every dollar, you know how tight we've been budget-wise, and as we grow and improve, we have to provide services for everybody, and to be severely undercounted really prevents us the opportunity from taking care of our citizens.
Our saying is the money follows the numbers, not the need. The need is there. We all identify that.
Yeah.
You're paying for that need now, even though you don't have the funds. If we can get the two of them to match, that it'll be a little bit easier to provide all those services that you're currently providing. And I think that's the message. And at the street level, at the individual level, they have to know that they're not doing it because it's an obligation. They should be doing it because they want to, because it helps the city that they live in.
Right.
Well,
Sure.
and then the seasonal people. If you are here At that time, on those dates, you are counted here, correct?
That's your responsibility, or actually
Yes.
it's the committee's.
That's
but
I just wanted to
we
put it
have-
out there in the
We
in the
have a
world.
unique opportunity in Palm Beach County. We are one of the few counties that will benefit by the choice of dates that the census has to put the notices out in the mail on March 12th. None of our seasonal residents will be on their way home on March 12th. They will be in the beginning of April. And as I say, if it got mailed on April 1st, it got to them on April 4th. They were already packing up their car to go up north or wherever, and they stuck it in a bag. And by the time they looked at it, they got another invitation up north. They filled it up north. You lost. So I say, and I have said this repeatedly to all of the towns, cities, and villages in Palm Beach, it's your opportunity. Seize it. There's a town that I went to that formed a complete count committee, and they created their own tagline. It's called "Capture the Count," because they have 70% of their residents are seasonal. So because they're going to be there, they're going to make sure that the people who are there understand it doesn't help us if you do it up there. It helps us if you do it. Now, as a census employee, I can't tell them where they should respond. And if you look at the resident's guide, it's a 6-page handout. It gives every possible scenario as to where someone would be counted. And in every one except one, and the one that is the exception is college students, because they're counted in the dormitory where they reside in the college. But every other one says it's where you, the resident, say you are. That's it. And there is no challenge to that. So if you say you're here, you're here. How do you get them to say you're here? That's our job, collectively.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Did you have any follow-up, Justin?
No, just a reminder that we're actually, the Complete Count Committee is kicking off next Thursday at 4. Sandy's going to return and do some training for us. And we have a nice cross-section that represents our community. And because it is important to get down into the street.
Right now you have one of the largest complete count committees on schedule.
Yay.
Yes, and I think we see a number of those representatives in our audience today. So if you're all here and participating in that process, would you please raise your hand so we can recognize you? 1, 2, 3. Pastor George, thank you very much for your help.
There you go.
Lucy, thank you.
All right, commission liaison reports and comments. Vice Mayor?
Nope. I'm going to take advantage of updating a little bit because we have a light and usually I skip. So just back from the Florida League of Cities, you have Live Local and Home Rule in front of you, just a little update. We have a new president, Isaac Salvar, from Bay Harbor. We went from We Live Local initiative. Our new initiative is from reading to leading, bring back civics. He's actually going to, with the Florida League of Cities, write a book that we as electeds can take and read in our schools to actually bring back civics and the connection from electeds, from reading to leading. So great initiative. I look forward to working with him and bringing that back to the city. And a few things, our new legislative actions, sales tax fairness, and I have reports on all this if anybody wants to dive into it a little different, but some of it we've been talking about for a while, and every time we go back to Tallahassee or Washington, we're kind of talking about the same thing. Comes down to home rule, the digital divide, local business tax protection, private property rights, Burt Harris Act, short-term rentals. I believe that's Vice Mayor Pro Temp's one of his board. He sits on that board. Annexation, that's big for our partners on the west side. Smoke-free zones in city parks. That's actually been brought to the Palm Beach County League of Cities. Palm Beach County League of Cities is moving forward, and I think that's something they've asked us. It might come to us soon, just to, I think I mentioned it a while back, putting up signs young lungs at play. Please don't smoke in our parks and beaches. That's something Palm Beach County's moved forward, and we need to do that in Tallahassee too. Transportation funding. I sit on that board. We need to continuously have transportation funding discussions, because what's happening is our transportation tax, we identify that a basic person pays about $300 a year in transportation tax. And, that's not big if you're thinking about it. However, we know that that's not enough money to fix our roads and our infrastructure, because we're struggling on local levels to do that. However, as gas tax is cut with electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, there will be no more funding. That funding will start drying up more. So there's conversations on how do we look at transportation funding in a different way. So that needs to be done. Water resources, affordable housing. Affordable housing is interesting because both myself and the Vice Mayor Pro Temp attended a full day affordable housing in Orlando. And every year they talk about housing first. Now that model with HUD may work in other areas, but it doesn't necessarily work in the city of Lake Worth Beach. We have over 200 placements, Goodwill placements in the city of Lake Worth Beach, and some of them are not good players. So by giving them a house, you're not taking care of the other issues, the mental illness, the drug addiction, the other issues that play into that, help us or deter us from doing our job here. So we had a different conversation. It was a great conversation. Tallahassee is doing some great things. So we're going to implement some of those things and see if we can bring it back on a local level. Water resources, and then going on to attendance. I'm sorry to be all dressed up today, but I had to attend the Palm Beach County Commission meeting on behalf of our neighbors, Palm Springs. They're looking to set up a CRA, and we're in support of that. And it really helps the unincorporated areas, which are between here and other cities, that sometimes we get caught into, and some of the crime and some of the infrastructure needs and things are not attended. So by creating a CRA, they can step up, partner with the county. So I'm happy to say that that is moving forward with a 4-3 vote to have that conversation. So hopefully they can get their CRA, and we can partner together. I attended the Sober Home meeting. I sit on the state attorney's Sober Home Task Force. Palm Beach County League of Cities Board meeting. In the morning, I have the BDP, Business Development Board. Also tomorrow, I have the South End Grant, PPSO grant. I'm working on a South End grant for some things over there. And I'll leave you with home rule, home rule, home rule. Thank you.
Commissioner Robinson?
I want to thank the public for its patience last night and the work we did towards improving our oceanfront park. It was arduous and successful, and looking forward to its final decision making. I want to thank the Palm Beach Sheriff Bradshaw for his limited 2% increase in our new contract. And I want to thank the city's financial auditor for his really in-depth report on code department suggestions for efficiency. And that's it.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a whole lot, but thank you, Vice Mayor Amoroso, for highlighting some of the things we experienced in Orlando this past week. I'm looking forward to working with our incoming president on his initiative, because obviously I feel very strongly about that civics really is not being addressed as it should be in our local schools. And so anything I can do to help the new president, I'm availing myself to do so. Just something I wanted to point out, it seems like we're having an uptick in graffiti. City manager, I don't know if you've noticed that. I know I've called you a couple of times. I just want to make us aware of this. I need to get the sheriff's office or whatever to clean that stuff up. I mean, unfortunately, we've got some really nice projects coming out of the ground, and as they prep their sites with the fencing and the screening, knuckleheads are coming along immediately and tagging that screening. So it doesn't really I don't feel warm and fuzzy about the new project as much as I did when I see somebody tag it as soon as they start, breaking ground. Let's see what else I want to mention. Well, there's some new faces in the crowd tonight. I want to welcome you all. I just met the new executive director for the Guatemala Mayan Center. I believe your name is Lucy. I haven't got your last name yet, but I'm looking forward to working with you and seeing what we could do. We had a dialogue with Father Frank and others about what we can do about the early learning challenges and getting some of these children the schooling that they need so they're ready for kindergarten and the other needs that they're going to have. And also I want to point out, recognize a couple of friends of mine. I got Ruth and Mary right there. Say, hey, hi, Ruth and Mary. Thank you for coming. They're not Lake Worth Beach residents, but I'm really nice to see them.
folk, right?
Shh, shh. Don't, they're from the other side.
Don't say
of the
that
tracks.
other L.
Exactly. So, and Pastor George, I haven't seen you in a month of Sundays. How you doing? Pastor Voss, what are you, everybody, what is this, a reunion tonight or what? But thank you all for coming. I'm sure much of your presence here is related to the census count, which is really, really important for us. 2010 was just an abject failure in my mind's eye as far as how we handle it and the results that we got. And it's been a long 10 years of, as was mentioned by the gentleman, Mr. Goodman, of, essentially being underfunded for services and things that we provide to the community that, we have more people than we really, we show on paper. So I'm looking for a much different result this time around, and I'm very excited about that. Let's see, what else do I have? That's it. And Pam Bergsma, I hope she's going to come up and tell us that she has some good news a little bit later. But thank you all for coming tonight. Nice to see you.
Commissioner Hardy?
Sure. The first thing that I'll say is school started last week, and what that means is that several thousand children here in Lake Worth will be attending schools. Some of them will be attending new schools because there are new boundaries that are now in effect for Highland Elementary and South Grade Elementary. Some of you are familiar with the fact that for the past Lord knows how many years, those schools have been over capacity. Both are at 117% of capacity this year for the first time in over a decade. They'll be under capacity. I think they'll each be under 95% capacity. Actually, that will actually decrease because if you have a sibling who's at the school, even if you were drawn out, you get to stay. Like a fourth or fifth grader, you get to stay. And if you have a sibling that's a fourth or fifth grader, you get to stay. If you're part of a dual language program, they worked it out that you get to stay because, for example, Barton Elementary, which is where some of the kids who are moved do not have a dual language program. Now, next up is to get Barton Elementary a dual language program because there are lots of families on the west side who want to send their kid to a school with a dual language program, and I completely understand that. And frankly, I would like to see all 4 of our elementary schools, Highland, North Grade, South Grade, and Barton, have dual language there. I think that's important. So that's something, I think that's the next push. So I was very happy to affect that change on the behalf of the residents in my district with help from Erica Whitfield and Dr. Deborah Robinson, both members of the school district board who represent parts of the city, and I'm happy that it's in effect. And that affects kids. The other thing is, I attended Tropical Ridge Neighborhood Association meeting as I typically do. And sometime in October, both Tropical Ridge Neighborhood Association and Royal Poinciana Neighborhood Association will meet with representatives from MBT Development, which won the CRA's RFP for I believe it's 12 parcels west of the tracks there. And we always talk about the attention that the west side needs to get. I think the fact that the CRA was able to aggregate that property and put it in play for development, and I think the fact that a developer at least, actually bid on that and has a plan for that is a positive thing for both Tropical Ridge and Royal Poinciana neighborhood. And I think people forget that, that's a part of the neighborhood too. That block between Lake and Lucerne is a part of the neighborhood. And so there will be a meeting with those 2 neighborhood associations that we're going to try to get together early October. The last thing is August 29th, which is a Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at the Osborne Community Center. There'll be a meeting about the opportunity zones. It will be the second such meeting. The first meeting I was visiting my parents, so I was not able to attend. I hope that many, many more people are able to attend. I'm trying to spread the word. I know that Commissioner Maxwell has been spreading the word, speaking with the pastors there. It's important to get folks to these meetings. If you're not there, you can't let your voice be heard. And so it's very, very important for members of the community to attend and to participate in the process. You don't get what you want. You don't get what you need if you're unable to participate in the process. And so those are my comments. Looking forward to a good meeting.
Thank you. I'll keep it short. You guys usually cover most of the stuff that I was going to cover anyway when I go last. TPA, we have the summer break, so no TPA this week. We also have coming up an education. We're trying to schedule our new Mayor's Education Council meeting. With that said, I'd like to encourage my fellow commissioners. You know, we've all been in unison and had consensus on needing to let the Palm Beach County School Board know that our schools need help. When you mentioned dual language programs and whatever, so I have raised my hand to be the biggest proponent of Lake Worth Beach schools to show up at these school board meetings, so that we can make sure that they know the Lake Worth's in the house, and that our kids need the help and our schools need the help. And I'd like to encourage you, as I will not be able to be always at every single one, that if you guys could help step up a little bit and make sure that we get at least our own group of people together each time that there's a meeting, so that they know that we're there and that we're not going away anytime soon. And our schools and our kids really need the help. And we need to have more of a voice. And I think by not being there, we're doing our schools a disservice. So I want to get extremely active in this upcoming year, myself, and just showing up there and putting our kids' needs. So these education council meetings are going to be focused on what our schools need on a constant basis, so we can be an advocate for them in those school board commission meetings. And we can maybe have a section we can add, if we can, to some of our agendas as what was reached in that meeting, so we can talk about it publicly before we go. So who's ever going to be a part of that and wants to speak, we can be on the same page and be according to sunshine. So I'm looking forward to that. Lots of things going on. Thank you all for your patience with me. I've been in and out, moving. I was speaking of Tropical Ridge. I was temporarily living in Tropical Ridge. Well, I was without a home between the sale of my house and the purchase of a new house. I'm still, of course, living in Lake Worth Beach. I just moved neighborhoods. So thank you for your patience. I'm almost back in the saddle. I'm almost ready to get out of lawn chair and onto a sofa soon. So we should be looking good here shortly. But I've been a little gone. But we had a meeting last night. It was very effective. Meeting tonight, and also a reminder, we have a budget work session on Thursday night this week. So if you'd like to come be a part of that, we'll be discussing all the funds, the challenges, the pitfalls, the hurrah moments, and everything in between. You'll dance, you'll laugh, you'll cry. It's a bestseller.
Madam Mayor, can you talk a little bit about the bus back to the beach?
Oh, yes. Mentioned a little bit about this last night. Met with Palmtran and the bus service, the route that we had from western communities all the way down Lake Worth Road to our beach that disappeared years ago when they were working on the casino project is returning. Yes. And they're actually going to promote the heck out of it, too. They're going to be really making it a beach bus type of experience. A lot of people in the western communities use our beach, but of course, here in town, too, a lot of people relied on that bus to get to and from the beach. So it's wonderful news. We're working on building a separate area and a bus shelter and whatnot, but they are so excited about resuming this line that they're going to start probably close to Old Bridge Park initially to return the route so that people can walk across the street to get to the beach temporarily while we build that shelter out. But they're talking about resuming it in January, if I'm not mistaken. That's the impression that I got. But they're raring to go, and it's very exciting. And we know a lot of people have missed this, and we want to thank Palmtran and the county for helping us in this endeavor. And hey, frees up more parking spots for everyone else that's driving, right? So good news all around. Thank you. All right. Public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Okay. And these are all public participation. Yep. Todd Townsend, followed by Pam Bergsma.
Hey friends, good to see everybody again. Last night was pretty intense, wasn't it? Very cool though. I just wanted to add one little thing to the pool situation. We in the public would like to be swimming this time next year. So we hope you can take that into consideration during your deliberations. Nobody wants to wait 3 or 4, maybe even more time than that, having to do with whatever can of worms gets opened up as we start working on that sensitive dune. So that's one. Number two, those tabletop thingies on 6th Avenue are hurting people. The tabletop things that keep the traffic inside, into the middle of the road, the tabletop thingies on the side. What are those things?
Street commerce.
Those street bumps, yeah. The ones on 6th Avenue are being destroyed by cars, all right? So that's a lot of impact, right? The ones on the streets in the middle of town aren't being touched at all. So that's, I think, evidence that something has to be done with those. I mean, cars are made to collide like this, or maybe like this, but not to have that wheel hit that curb at that speed. We're looking at breaking people's necks. It's not cool. We got to do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Bergsma, followed by Peggy Fisher.
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, I am so very, very happy to announce that we have an infant eye care bill sponsored by Senator Lauren Book, SB 46, and Representative Christian Jacobs, HB 67. So we now have the opportunity, when we get this passed, this session coming up in 2020, we will be giving all of the children born in the state of Florida their right to sight. We will ensure the best sight possible, starting at birth. And most importantly, what happened to Joey 20 years ago will not happen again. It will never happen to another child. So I know working together, this is going to be done. Sadly, it took 2 decades. It took 20 years, but it's supposed to happen in 2020. The goal is to give all of our children 2020 sight, and 2020 is upon us. It should happen now. And Joey will be gone 20 years in 2020. When we pass this session, it will be implemented July 1st, and Joey will be 23 years old on July 5th. So I know it's going to happen, and I appreciate everything that you have done with your support over the last 2 decades. And I know Joey's very proud of his town. And we're going to have to work hard, everybody, to make it happen now. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Peggy Fisher, followed by Ryan Uplander.
I guess I'll skip my name and address too, like everyone else is. At our quasi-judicial meeting, Scott Maxwell said that A Street is a mess, a horrible mess, to quote him, and I agree. And one of the things that would help North A Street, whether it's at the roundabout all the way to the north part of town, is to eliminate the truck traffic, which is posted as restricted. It's posted at the roundabout, it's posted north and south at 10th Avenue. Car carriers, Palm Tram buses, which I talked to the man from Palm Tram about, tractor trailers, delivery trucks. This is a residential street. This is not a thoroughfare in our city, and we shouldn't let anyone treat it that way. So I'd appreciate, once again, next year I'm bringing it up. At your meeting 2 weeks ago, there was a very unappealing move to table a discussion item. And I would hope that the city attorney can explain to you all the difference between a move to table and a move to postpone, because they're 2 different things. If you table something, it's supposed to come back at the next meeting, no matter whether you say table for 2 weeks, table for a year, table for 6 months. That's what Robert's rules say. Snook Island regulations have been in place since 2012. The code of ordinances say no overnight boat parking at the docks. That has been going on for at least 5 years. And the city is not enforcing it and doesn't want to enforce it because the parking director who I talked to said, oh, we can't do that. Someone might fall and get into the water. Well, if you're going to put in rules, the expectation would be you're going to enforce them. If you have no intention of enforcing them, don't put them in. Don't set hours. Don't say you can't park, it's 4-hour boat parking and then you're supposed to move. Don't waste our time, your time, anybody's time to enforce it or anything else if you are not going to enforce the regulations you all set up. I just think that that's not serving anybody, because you've got some people who are conscious of rules and will obey them. And then you have people who just say, well, they don't enforce them, so I'll do what I want. Thank you.
Ryan, followed by Todd.
Hi, Ryan Oblander, 1702 North A Street. I'm actually here, excuse me, representing Sunset Ridge Neighborhood Association. I apologize to Debbie. I was supposed to contact her and get myself on the agenda for a presentation of 10 minutes, but I'm just going to try to squeeze it down as fast as possible. For those that don't know, the Sunset Ridge neighborhood is the northwest neighborhood. It's the largest one, bordered by 10th and Dixie. Starting to see a lot of activity there. Most notably, the mids going under construction, finally, all the demolition taking place. Lake Cove, and with all the new homes and new residences moving in. There's a new four-way stop at 19th and A. You know, that's an improvement. A lot of people turning around there too fast. At 20th, it's not really easy to see. But we're noticing the new roads are an improvement. The sidewalks around the ball fields are especially nice once we get to use those. Some notable highlights that happened were the sale of the Scottish Rite building. What else? The raising of the land next to the mid. We're curious what's going to go there, mixed use development and whatnot. So, you know, we're half excited, half nervous. Membership and attendance waxes and wanes based on certain issues that happen to the neighborhood, usually city issues that come up, like proposed Dollar General site plan, things like that. Kind of gets everyone riled up and, you know, ready to go. Some fun things that we did in the past year. In the spring, we had 2 pop-up events that our neighbors threw together that were really popular at Matthews Brewery and back of the Shack. You know, a lot of our neighbors are some of our most active neighbors. We enjoyed that. Also, some recreation events like the day in the park, other things. Those are really fun. Speaking of those kind of events, we were trying to do more. Like, we're trying to organize some kind of basement tour because we're on the ridge and no one's really seen everyone's basement before. So we think that might be kind of cool, like a walking, drinking basement tour.
Are there really basements?
Yeah, there's basements. And then a big event that we're in the works with is with Healthier Lake Worth. We're trying to organize a huge FIFA-style elimination soccer event to get our, community members more involved who wouldn't normally be involved because they don't speak English, but they love to play soccer, which is a universal sport. So we're going to get that up and coming for the next couple of years and see what we can do with that. Otherwise, we still have our quality of life issues that most people complain about, traffic and speeding, especially on 14th and 15th Avenue North around the park. The kids that like to go there just drag race down those roads. Neighbors have gotten their cars hit multiple times, and they would like speed bumps on those roads in particular. Otherwise, we can brag that we have some of the lowest crime in the entire city because we're in the north end, but drugs and prostitution is still relevant on Dixie Highway and the 10th Avenue corridor itself. Otherwise, that's all I have. I hope I didn't go too fast. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was pithy.
Todd, Les?
Hello, Todd Velez, 530 North G. I'm coming on behalf of Bethel Temple or Church of God on North Congress or South Congress and 6th Avenue South. And their original church is at 1132 16th Avenue North. And what's significant about that is that recently we just found out that Ira Stanfill was the founding minister of that church, which wrote gospel songs 550, which links us nationally, internationally to Lake Worth. And that's all recent information. And that church is still standing, but is part of the demo that's going on there. So we're asking to go into the building, which is open, and we're inviting the mayor because of the significance of that particular pillar of the community, he and his wife. And we're finding out which songs were written in Lake Worth. West Palm has summer time, and now we may have He Washed My Eyes with Tears, and There's Room on the Cross for You. And he also worshiped in this building when it was a community center. And then they quickly built that building in 57, 56. And it's sort of a gimmick that he was such a high-profile individual, something like the attorney William Jennings Bryant was brought in by the Presbyterians just a stone's throw from here to the south to build up that, and Lake Worth being the first Presbyterian church of the county, and this, the Bethel, is joining the list of first in the county here in Lake Worth. So that's what we're asking for, that we can go into that building before it's demolished. They're not trying to stop the demolition of the building. But it does show that we should look a little further into our history as these things come to the board to be handled for demolition, or what's relevant, what's not relevant. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more thoughts?
That's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Going to move right on to new business. Item 12A, resolution number 44-2019, changing the rules of procedure for commission meetings.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Vice Mayor. City Manager?
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, this resolution is the results of what we discussed at a workshop back in July 23rd this year, and its purpose was to look at amending your resolution that governs how you run your meetings. And the topic was finding a time during the meeting where commissioners could bring items forward for consideration so that you could give direction and dedicate potentially staff time, resources, and energy of the organization to either look more into a topic, do a workshop, or bring back an agenda item, or a red light, green light, yellow light approach. The red light would be that you're not interested in doing it at that time, and that framework hasn't existed before. So this resolution amendment amends your current governing policies to allow for that process to take place. It also does a couple of other things. It clarifies some language of the types of meetings, including the new electric utility board meeting that you now have each month at the end of the month, and clarify some other issues that have sort of plagued the wording of this agenda. But the substantive changes are the inclusion of this agenda process, and y'all are familiar with that. So if there's any questions or comments, staff and the attorney are ready to answer any questions.
Sure. I just want to make sure, for example, if a commissioner were to use this process, that we have something in there that says the idea at least gets a hearing before, for example, the idea can be tabled and voted upon. I think that's important. I think that when a commissioner takes the time and the effort to bring an idea to this body, the idea should be discussed. I think that if commissioners have issues with the idea, they should discuss their issues with the idea in the public. And I don't think it's ever really appropriate to have things shut down before there's a discussion on it. And so, to the attorney's opinion, does this ensure that things will at least be discussed before they're voted up or down, for example?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy, if you look at it's page 5 of the resolution. This is under rule number 5, subparagraph 4, where the bulk of this process is discussed. The way that this should come up is that the commissioner responsible for putting the item on the agenda is given the floor first to make his or her presentation on why they added it to it. Now, that's the way we have this proposed in here. So ideally, the mayor or the chair of the meeting calls the item and says, for example, Commissioner Robinson, it's your item, please present it. At that time, they have the opportunity to present it, and then if someone wants to make a motion based on that's left up to the discretion of the board.
Surely.
But that's how we've written it at this point.
Right.
We can certainly amend that to make it stronger or make it broader and less defined, but that's the way we presented it.
Okay. All right. So they're having the floor, and they don't have to give up the floor until they're done explaining their idea.
The way it's written now, no, but I imagine that if someone went on indefinitely, someone might say, okay.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. All right. I think that's important. The other thing here, we had some issues previously about what is this, Rule 1? Is that Section 7? And we had issues about the clarity, right? About we basically had a discussion in the past about whether or not the motion has to be made before or during the 30th minute of discussion. And I would just like to see some clarity in there so that we don't have anything to bicker about in the future. And I'm wondering if anyone here on this board would be willing to either way, whether you think on or after or whatever, the 30th minute that you can make a motion in the discussion, or whether you think it has to be done before or during the 30th minute. It doesn't really matter. I just think there should be some clarity so that there's no ambiguity whatsoever. I mean, I wonder how my colleagues feel. This is the rule that says any matter appearing on a regular electric utility or special meeting agenda that takes more than 30 minutes for the city commission to debate or discuss, excluding public comment and staff presentation, shall be moved to a work session prior to official action of the city commission unless this requirement is waived by majority vote. That unless this requirement is waived by a majority vote is pretty much the way it was, but we had a big brouhaha here over, when that motion has to be made. So I don't want any future commissions to have a brouhaha, and I think it should be in the rule specifying when the motion has to be made, how a person can obtain the floor to make such a motion. For example, if one person obtains the floor and just filibusters, they can bring the discussion to the 30th minute and create a situation where it has to go to a workshop. There should be probably a mechanism for someone else to gain the floor to make a motion to extend the discussion if they need to prevent another meeting from occurring on this issue. So thoughts? I'm wondering.
Commissioner Robinson?
I'm wondering about the requirement for backup. If it's for discussion, is backup required?
Madam Mayor, the way the process currently is written, when the item's submitted to the clerk, you can provide it with or without backup.
So there will be discussion then, regardless of and this rule establishes that it can't be stymied before the matter is discussed.
Madam Mayor, right. So the way we proposed it is the chair will call in the item, and whoever put the item on the agenda, they'll be given an opportunity to present it. And then it's really at the discretion of the body what they want to do.
And there's no discretion at the clerk's line. There's no, if it's given to the clerk in a timely matter, it'll be on the agenda.
That's correct.
Good. And the understanding that any discussion may go past 30 minutes and require another workshop. Is that how it's going to work?
Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct. In terms of if a discussion matter that's following this procedure, if it takes longer than 30 minutes, it would then automatically move to a work session unless that's waived.
Right.
Question for you. I thought this was about the process of having a section on the agenda where we bring up the issues that we wanted to discuss, and then we red light, green light, yellow light them to become agenda items. Right?
Madam Mayor, you're correct. The way this is that to just go through the process, if yourself or commissioner wants to put something on the agenda to discuss, they provide it to the clerk in a timely manner. The clerk then puts it on the agenda under new business as a discussion matter, brief title, and who presents the item. When we get to that item on the agenda, yourself or the chair would then say, next item is a discussion presented by Commissioner X. They'd be given opportunity to present the item, which could then turn into a discussion, red light, green light, yellow light. The discussion goes on too long, could then be pushed to a work session, or that could be waived.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. As far as when we decide to extend to 30 minutes is really not really important. I think the more substantive issue here is limiting these conversations. I really frankly don't want to be here and have somebody filibuster for their position. I think there needs to be some timelines given. Maybe the presenter has 5 minutes to give it their pitch, so to speak, and then we decide, very quickly. Maybe we each get a minute to comment, and then boom, we decide. But I have no active interest in this, back and forth and having a long, drawn-out conversation about every initiative that gets brought forth, because that's essentially what we do now. The purpose of this process is to streamline things and, keep things moving. So, I would be interested in some kind of a, just some guidelines on how much time we're going to spend presenting on any issue. So let's say, for example, the presenter gets 5 minutes and the rest of us get 1 minute. Or so you got 10 minutes to hammer out one item, then you move on to the next item. But I have no active interest in getting into a situation where we have to go into a workshop to discuss an initiative. If we're going to do that, then what's the point of having this meeting?
Vice Mayor?
Okay, Madam Attorney, a couple, I think there needs to be a time limit on it, because I totally agree with Commissioner Maxwell that, we got here because staff had issues with being pulled in directions that was taking staff time and possibly taxpayers' dollars on issues that may not been, moved forward by this commission. So we were looking for a clear red light, green light, yellow light. Yellow light might be something as a workshop. Red light would definitely be no. Green light would be yes. This is a little different, and I'm concerned that, again, there's no backup. For transparency, for clarity, how can the voters know to be here and or speak on issues if there's no backup? And I'll talk about the elephant in the room. The one I tabled, there was no backup. And the next day, when I was called an asshole on social media,
Point of order.
Just stating the facts, it was clear that somebody was going to make a presentation that was not in the backup. And I have those screenshots. So it's concerning to me that we would move forward with something with no backup. And obviously there were certain commissioners that knew that certain people were going to speak on the issue. I could have had people to speak on the issue if I knew exactly what the issue was. So I'm concerned about time. I'm concerned about transparency. I'm concerned about, exactly what we're doing as far as green light, red light. I thought it was going to be something a little simpler that would help us move issues forward on an agenda.
Commissioner Hardy?
Sure. The one thing that I'll say is that not having backup is not a reason to table an item. If you lack information about an item.
Personal opinion.
Excuse me.
One at a time, please.
I have the floor. So it's my turn to express such opinions. What I'll say before I was interrupted was that not having backup is not a reason to table an item. If you don't know what a commissioner is bringing forward, seemingly one would want to allow the commissioner to explain his idea. How can you learn about the issue that you don't know about if you feel the need to table it immediately and prevent that commissioner from discussing it? And so, to me, while I do believe that backup should be provided on agenda items, and while I had a very serious conversation with the city manager about that, I also feel that if there is no backup, then we should at least hear the commissioner out, because otherwise you're tabling something you have no idea about. You could potentially table the Save the Puppies legislation coming from here. You'd have no idea, right? So that's why you want to allow someone to discuss something. The other thing is, I'm not afraid of discussion, and I'm not afraid of hearing what people think about ideas, and I think that's crucial to us making decisions about each other's ideas. And we don't have arbitrary limits on the amount of discussion time aside from Rule 1, Section 7 we don't have arbitrary limits on the amount of discussion time that we can have for ideas that come from staff. I see no reason why we should have limits on discussion time other than Rule 1, Section 7 about ideas that come from members of this body. If anything, it should be the reverse, right? I mean, we are the people who are sitting on this dais because folks voted for us and sent us here to do their business. Each of us has different business to do for the different people who sent us here. If anything, we should limit discussion about ideas that come from the unelected folks. If we're going to be limiting people's ideas, I don't think we should be limiting discussion at all. Really, I think discussion is part of what we do here. So the other thing is, I again have a question about. Commissioner Maxwell said it's not a big deal. It's been a big deal before. We've had arguments about it on this dais. I think it should be clarified so that there's no future arguments about when this motion has to be made. I think the other thing that's really important is how can a person obtain the floor to make a motion to extend the discussion? That's really, really critical. Because if someone, let's say Commissioner Maxwell sees that an idea is about to die on this dais, and so in order to keep it from dying, he takes the floor at the 28th minute, talks and talks and talks, gets to the 30th minute. We don't allow anyone else to take the floor. The idea automatically has to go to a workshop. I think, that's not necessarily what any of us would want. So we should create a mechanism for someone to gain the floor to extend the discussion so that a motion can be made to quash the issue or what have you, or to pass it or, whatever. So anyway, the other thing is, what exactly are the motions that we're making under Rule 5, Section 4, subsection E? Would we be making a motion to pursue the item or red light the item, or how would those motions work, Madam Attorney?
Madam Mayor, I think we're really just looking for a consensus and not an actual vote, treating it more as a sort of a discussion item. But if you wanted to, you could say, I make a motion that we direct staff to investigate this matter and come back with an agenda item. So you could do it either way.
You can make a motion in a workshop or whatever we're calling them these.
Right.
City Manager.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, one of the topics we discussed back in July was where to place this. And what I'm hearing is, in the current location in your regular meeting, it's a more formalized process. And the give and take on discussing the items is a little different than a workshop environment. That was something in the options we presented, just to remind you that if you had a meeting once a month or a pre-meeting where you could bring items up and have that conversation without the pressure of all the other rules and regulations, to build consensus, it's a little more free-flowing. I want to just bring that back up. This is crafted, though, as part of a formalized meeting, so it gets a little more clearer defined when you start to make it part of this agenda as opposed to a workshop environment. So I just want to throw that back out there. Y'all did discuss that as an option.
I just think that we have to be consistent in whatever way you pose it. I mean, first of all, it saddens me that we even have to have this conversation, but by seeing the lights and the banter that's gone on this dais here, the fact that we have to create new rules that no other city in town has to do just to get along, to be able to get an idea, is just the silliest thing that I've ever. I mean, if we could all just exercise rules, mutual respect, and whatever. We never had a problem with any filibustering or someone going the amount of time and using the amount of time. In the 8 years that I've been sitting here, it's never happened once. So the fact that we have to recreate the wheel here to do this is really sad, but I'm going along with it. I want everyone to feel heard and whatever, but it's just plain sad. It really is. And if someone's not going to have backup, then they shouldn't have people presenting at it. If you want to talk about an item and talk about why you're interested in bringing it as an agenda item, and there's no backup, that's fine, but don't expect to introduce any talkers or people. When you have it and it comes to an agenda item, then you can bring any presenter you want to do it. You're pitching an idea, and you're pitching an item for the agenda that you're bringing from the people of the place that you bring in. I don't think that you should be able to do that. But I mean, talk to me, tell me why that's wrong, and I'll be more than happy to listen. But I just think that we're trying to say the idea that of something, an item that we wanted to discuss. I mean, I personally think you should have a backup on it if it's going to be on a regular meeting. If it's going to be in a work session or something like that, maybe we could be a little bit looser on it. But bringing someone in and parading a bunch of people and public comments and all that kind of stuff when we haven't even made it an agenda item defeats the purpose of deciding whether it's going to go on the agenda or not. So, it's a visioning session. What you're asking to do is a visioning session, which we used to always do as part of our general practice, which is to talk about what are our vision. We had that visioning session. What are our objectives? What are the things we want to achieve together? And in those sessions and work sessions, we create this agenda that we all work with together to accomplish for the people of this community. So, and this is just that I'm just not liking anything of it, but whatever. Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
I want to remind everybody things, Madam Mayor, that I think you've mentioned several times over the years, and I've said it before. Generally speaking, we as a body come together to conduct the business of the city. We don't come here in search of discovery. We don't come here in search of, necessarily a debate on everything. We've said it before, and I'll say it again. Each of us should already know what we're doing when we walk in this room, generally speaking. Now, I'm not saying that somebody from the public can't offer us something that's different that we didn't think about and whatever, but going back to this process here, okay, I get the impression that we're kind of watering this down towards anything goes. We've got all contingencies considered so we can somehow hammer our point through. We need to conduct the people's business. Each of us has our likes and our desires and our ambitions, our agendas or whatever. But we simply can, I think most of us can succinctly express ourselves in 5 minutes over what the item is, and if there's a consensus from the commission to move forward, then we move forward. But this thought of, gee, we may go to 30 minutes and have to have a vote on whether to extend the conversation on somebody's initiative scares the heck out of me. I don't want to be here with that. That's not how we should be conducting our businesses. The opportunity to learn more about that initiative, to talk about it in length and have a dialogue will come if we agree that we want to move forward with it. But if you can't convince us in 5 minutes, if I can't convince my colleagues in 5 minutes that my initiative is worthy enough to even consider, well, then I dare say that, spending 30 minutes trying to make my point is going to get me any further. So that's all I have. But I just don't want to be having each of us have an initiative and we get us a vote to take it to a workshop. Well, that defeats the whole purpose of what we're doing here. Defeats the whole purpose of why we're doing this.
Commissioner Robinson?
The hypocrisy of talking about transparency and then not being able to talk about a topic that is self-explanatory, and the concern for this is the opposite of filibustering if a person doesn't get a chance to at least speak to a topic that was on the agenda. To me, it appeared to be orchestrated by more than one, and it's offensive to not have the respect or not be able to demonstrate respect to fellow commissioners, to have something immediately not considered or even a conversation about it, as limited as it would be, to stop it before it started was truly not what we're here for. And I consider our time together important enough. And if Commissioner Maxwell thinks it's a waste of time or
No directing towards another commissioner, please. Directed towards me. I get the fun of it all.
I am. I just think that it was a demonstration of a process that at this point, we're here to make a little clearer and to talk about transparency, and then not be able to talk about something is a hypocritical.
The whole reason that the 30-minute rule was created, that was probably in the first 2 years when I got here with an entirely different commission. I'm sure you all remember. And the issue that it occurred from was the fact that there were people that were literally using the floor to state over and over again the same thing, hoping that if they repeated themselves in different language 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 times, that the result that they wanted in the end would materialize miraculously, when there was it appeared to be no consensus on the dais that those issues would be. But several people felt intent on hammering it home as long as till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and bringing in groups of people and having everybody say. I mean, it was quite contentious and very disrespectful, and a lot of really good business decisions were not made at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning for the city, and we tried to upgrade to a more professional atmosphere in which people did their homework before they got here. We obviously would present it for the first time on a first reading, do the entire presentations, have staff do the presentations, do your homework on them, and then make decisions here in a timely fashion based on how you feel about it. Most commission meetings, if you watch them, they are, I am not going to vote to support this because of X, Y, and Z, or I am going to support this because of X, Y, and Z. Another person talks, they say why they're for or against it. Another commissioner talks why they're for or against it. Another person talks why they're for or against it. And the same on the end. Maybe someone brings up an interesting comment. Well, I didn't consider that. Being that Commissioner so-and-so mentioned that, I didn't take that into account. Therefore, I would support that because of X, Y, and Z. And these are the kinds of this is how they do it. It's once around, a once follow-up, and boom, you vote. That's how the majority of, if you watch the majority of commission meetings throughout the county, in many cities and towns, that's how they work. Us, on the other hand, we have to recreate Robert's Rule 16 times, come up with 15 different ways to be transparent and open and honest and listening and talking, and that, my goodness gracious. I'm trying here, but it really is getting crazy. Just speak your mind, say your piece. I want to hear you. How many times have I changed my mind sitting here listening to something that I didn't think I would agree with, and then I'm like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. I get that. I voted with some of you and against some of you, all of you at different times. We all have our feelings on stuff, and we should be able to express them. I would never want to limit that. But let's use some common sense here, folks. Not, we're trying to legislate something that we should know intently just by being a commissioner. That's our responsibility. It shouldn't be legislated, but if we have to, let's do it. Commissioner Hardy.
I need to see this come back in a different form. I just want there to be some clarity on the 30-minute thing, because people can say it's not a problem. We've had a problem about the 30-minute thing more than once. So I think there needs to be some clarity about the 30-minute thing.
I'm happy to revisit the 30-minute thing.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a 30-minute rule.
I didn't enforce the 30-minute rule when you first got elected, did I?
Well,
no.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, if we're going to have arguments about it, which we have, about the meaning of the rule, and we have an opportunity to clarify the rule, we should clarify the rule so that there are no more arguments about it. That's all that I'm saying. So what we've argued about in the past is, when does the motion have to be made? And what we've argued about in the past, because I got on this dais, I made a motion to extend the discussion. I got a second on that motion, and that motion wasn't heard or discussed, right? And so to prevent any future issues, we should clarify the rules exception while we have an opportunity to do that.
Madam Mayor, if I may. When we discussed this previously, the main issue was adding things to the agenda. So we didn't address making any changes to that. But what I would recommend is the way we do it at 10 o'clock And the way the rules currently read is that once we get to 10 o'clock in any meeting, all discussion ceases. And unless there's a vote to extend it to 11, the meeting's over. So we could take that same language and apply it to the discussion rule.
Where does that language appear? I'm sorry.
It's in Rule 1, subsection 6.
This was not one of the changes. Okay.
No, it's the way it's always been. So like, for example, last night when we hit 10 o'clock, the meeting was over, there was no vote to extend it further. So we could use that same theory and apply it for the 30-minute discussion rule.
It's a hard stop.
Right.
Yeah. So
But by hard stop meaning it goes to a
it would go to a work session unless there's a vote to waive the requirement for it to go to a work session.
Okay, so how does one obtain the floor to create the opportunity for such a vote?
Well, the way it's written currently for the 10 o'clock, all discussion stops.
Okay.
So at 10 o'clock, I think if the city clerk normally announces, Madam Mayor, it's 10 o'clock, boom, the discussion stops. At that point, the floor would be essentially open. The mayor could certainly, or the chair could certainly call for, is there a motion to extend? If not, it goes to a work session.
But that's back to the point of, why would you give a work session to an item you haven't agreed to make an agenda item? That makes absolutely no sense.
Well, and we could certainly address that for discussion items. I was just talking in general, the 30-minute discussion rule. So we've got sort of a detailed process now for you to add things to the agenda. So in that process, we could certainly put a hard stop and time limits.
And it doesn't go to workshop on something you haven't even agreed to make an agenda item.
If that's the desire of the majority, yes, we could put that in there.
Okay, so, okay, now, Rule 1, Section 7 applies in cases other than just when a commissioner brings an item.
Correct. Rule 7 of
It could apply
subsection
to
7 of
staff's
Rule
items.
1.
It can apply to staff's items. Staff comes up
It's-
with an item, brings it to the commission, and right. So we wouldn't want to have that apply to this idea that hard stop 30 minutes, no future meeting either. We wouldn't want that to apply to all items, just to commissioners' items.
Madam Mayor, if I may, the way that rule has always been written, it applies to the commission's debate or discussion. It doesn't apply to any presentation.
Well, not yet, but like staff brings in us an item, like let's say a resolution, let's say this resolution right here, right? We get to 30 minutes. If what you just described was in place, right? Where this idea that why would we allow someone to make a motion? Like why would we allow something to go to a workshop when we're not even sure if we want it to begin with? If we put that in Rule 1, Section 7, that would apply to more than just stuff that we bring ideas. It would apply to contracts. It would apply to all sorts of stuff.
Madam Mayor, I don't know that there's a case that you can point to where staff did a 30-minute presentation.
I'm not talking about.
But it's always about your debate on that topic.
Right.
So, I mean, that rule exists now, doesn't it?
I'm not talking about.
So you mean for any agenda item, if there's a contract and you guys start to engage in a debate or discussion that lasts for 30 minutes, that rule would apply?
You just described a scenario just before now. You described a scenario because the mayor said, well, why would we allow someone to take an item that they brought to the commission to a workshop when the commission isn't sure that it wants to go any further with this? It's like an automatic yellow light, even though the commission hasn't given them a yellow light, okay? So your response to that, if I remember correctly, was that we could have something where basically it's a hard stop at 30 minutes and that we don't go to a future workshop. We shouldn't, if that's what we come up with, that shouldn't be an amendment to Rule 1, Section 7. It should be somewhere else because Rule 1, Section 7 applies broadly
Yes, you're
to all
correct.
items discussed on the
Yes,
side.
yes, yes, you're
Okay.
correct.
Can we create a separate title for that part, that whatever that, like, so that it's aside from, new items, new business, unfinished business, could it be,
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. Right now, the way we've done it is if you go to Rule 5, the order of business, it would just be under L, new business, where we would identify a commission discussion matter. You could create a separate category on the agenda to say,
We make it at the end when we have, like, before we have the attorney report and the city manager report, we put it in a special section there, so that, because again, if we're not having people speak on the items and do that, that's, you know, it'd be a good place to do it for the attorneys and the whatever.
Basically,
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
business.
Do we not want public comment?
Again, it's not an agenda item yet. It will be, if it makes an agenda item, it will be open
Well,
to public comment.
It would be on the agenda. You know, anything that we discuss would be on the agenda. So, for example, if someone were to come and you know, present an item, for example, I don't know, about a topic that affects certain people in the city, right? And maybe other commissioners on the dais don't experience this issue. So the commissioner presents the issue, there's discussion. Are we saying that we don't want people from the community who might be affected by this issue to be able to, as they normally would when there's an item on the agenda, get their 2 minutes to inform the commission that there are people in the public who care about this as well?
But you're basically creating a set of rules that you're creating an agenda item from something that's not an agenda item yet.
Well, no, I mean, an agenda item is anything that appears on the agenda.
Madam
It's
Mayor,
not
we've reached the
necessarily-
30-minute limit. I move that we
Motion.
I move that we close this conversation right now and vote.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
So we just approved the
Actually-
resolution. We just approved the resolution.
No, that's not how that works.
Yes,
You would
that's
have to
exactly
make a
how it works.
motion to call the question.
That was,
and
I didn't
that's
call
not
the question.
motion right, so you can't
You
force
made
us to vote. What you just did was moved us to
and
a
I,
workshop.
you know, the funniest thing about this whole thing is that,
30 minutes.
you know what the one duty of the mayor is?
Run the meeting.
To run the meeting. And you basically want to change the whole set of rules on how a meeting's operate and how I run the meeting so it appeals to whatever issue that week that you want it to appeal to. And I really resent it.
What was the motion that Commissioner Maxwell
Motion
made?
that he made was to end the meeting, was to,
End of discussion, take a vote.
because at 30 minutes, and it was seconded, so that was, and it was approved, but so we still need a motion to adjourn.
No,
Wait.
No.
How does one end discussion without calling the question?
Yeah, I didn't call the question. I asked for the mayor to lead the meeting. That's what I did.
At the end of 30 minutes.
According to the rules.
According to our rules, at the end of 30 minutes, it goes to a workshop.
So we're sending this to a workshop.
No,
But
we
you
just
didn't call
approved
the
it.
question.
I didn't call the question intentionally. I asked for the mayor to ask for a vote. And I did not call the question.
30 minutes is the rule to go to workshop.
That's
I specifically chose my words on purpose. I did not call the question. I said, it's 30 minutes. I moved that we go ahead and vote.
Yeah.
But a motion wasn't.
On what exactly?
Well, we had a motion and a second, yeah.
And we did.
Wait, on
we voted.
what? On what?
To approve.
To vote on the
Vote
item.
on the item, so it was
So
approved.
you said
It was approved.
But the only motion to force a vote on an item is calling the Madam Attorney. How can one force a vote on an item?
You can force a vote on calling the question. Now, what I believe Commissioner Maxwell just did was made a motion to end the debate because of the 30-minute rule, and then
Take the vote.
take the vote on the resolution. The vote that was just taken was to end the debate. We still have the
Is that a
motion on the table to approve the resolution.
Correct.
Okay.
No, I saw it as.
So where does that appear in our rules or in Robert's rules that one ends a debate not by calling the question but by some other means?
Well, it's the rule we've just been going over.
This is a 30-minute rule.
It doesn't
It's
say
thir-
that debate ends, but that's not the rule that governs us. It doesn't say that debate ends and you vote on the issue. It says that debate ends and you go to a workshop.
Unless
wanted
this
to vote on the
requirement is
issue.
waived by a majority vote.
Right, but if he wanted
It
to vote on
was.
the issue, he would have to do what I did back in whatever that was and vote to extend the discussion to create a vote. That's what I had to do when we had the issue here about community IDs. I couldn't just say, I moved to vote on this. I had to move to extend the discussion so that someone can get the floor to make a motion to call the question, which is what we did. And then we voted on calling the question, then we voted on the motion on the
I'm
floor.
done. I'm finished. Good night.
Because otherwise, what you're saying is what I was required to do at that meeting back when we had about the community IDs was not the proper procedure, but I was told that that was the procedure that I would need to do to create an opportunity to vote after the 30 minutes had elapsed.
I would encourage someone to make a motion that would have staff discuss with the commissioners their needs and clean this item up and bring it back for a vote after it's cleaned up based on the conversations that we heard here tonight and everyone's concerns. I think we gave you some pretty good guidelines, and I'd be more than happy to have a lengthy conversation with you, and you talk with each and every one of the commissioners to find out that their needs are met, and we'll bring it back for a vote. What do you say?
Is that transparent?
Someone would have to
We,
withdraw
we
their
would
motion.
we would go over all the issues that were discussed.
Yeah. So, do I leave it in your hands as to whether you want to keep the motion or withdraw the original motion?
Madam Mayor, we can simply vote on this tonight and still have the same conversation with the attorney to clean it up. There's no point in,
Whichever you'd like to do.
well, we've got a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
How are we
Aye.
discussing?
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Nay.
I'm sorry, motion fails 3-2.
Okay.
That's fine. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
wait.
moved.
I'm sorry, we've got the city manager's report.
Kinkajou.
See, we made national news with that?
Yeah, we did.
And they even
Twice
got
that
the
week.
beach right. They added beach to the name.
Just want to remind everybody that Thursday night we get to come together again as a big happy family and talk budget.
Yay!
There you go.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Beautiful.
Prove it.